Texas on this sunshiny day. It's Color Commentary, and we are Adrian Guarzales.
And Michael Petchik.
Alright, so I believe our first item of business today is...
F&M?
Oh yeah, F&M. Go ahead. I played an EMA draft. I was Green Black Elves, and I opened a foiled Days. Hooray!
So you made your money back?
I did indeed.
That's good, that's good. I was playing Pauper, as per usual. I played Mono Red since I've been on a kick with it. Played against Delver Fiend in the first round. Actually won in game 3 off a mull to 5 with no lands.
What?
Yeah, dude mulled down to 5 and he was just
I
like...
thought you mulled to 5.
Oh, no. No, I got the full 7 and Kiln Fiended out on turn 3.
Gotcha, cool.
It was not pretty. I think I wound up turn 3ing a couple people. Round 2 was against Stompy. Garrett, a local player, showed up with Stompy. I haven't played against Stompy enough to know how to play against it. And game 3 came down to him landing a super early Vault Scourge and just getting out of range way too quickly.
Yeah, Vault Scourge plus Rancor, Vault Scourge plus Bone Splitter is a great way for that deck to race you.
He didn't even get enchantments on it. He just kept cracking in with it, and I have no flyers, and I could not draw into those lava darts on my sideboard. So, good games though. Very, very solid games, and we both had a good time with it.
Garrett's a great dude. We should maybe get him on here sometime.
Yeah, we could. And then round 3, so at that point I was 1-1, and I went up against Mono Black. And he did not have very good draws that, let him remove stuff, and I think I finished it out in 2, and I Kiln Fiended out on, turn 3 both games.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so a little bit of a side note from your story at F&M, you did mention that someone showed up with a Peregrine Drake combo deck.
Yes. And I believe he went either 1-2 or 0-3.
He was playing the full Esper build, right?
Yes, he was basically, from what I saw, it looked very similar to a Fairies build, just with Fairies subbed out for Peregrine Drake. So,
yeah, and as we discussed, I'm not 100% sure that's correct. You don't really need the enablers as much, and I feel like you could free up those slots for maybe some more interactive spells, or some ways to tutor out your combo, or ramp a little better. Because I played against the Simic version, and if I didn't have a Galvanic Blast, I mean, this was me and my other friend Andrew testing, and if I didn't have the Galvanic Blast, he basically won the game.
Yeah. I definitely think that it was not the best one. I think he did win a game, which might actually, as I told him that night, make him the first player in a Wizards sanctioned event to win a game with Peregrine Drake combo, which is kind of neat.
We're gonna go ahead and claim that distinction, actually. So tell your friends, you heard it here. Pat's Games.
But yeah, pretty good Friday night. We had a super diverse meta. We had Stompy, we had one Delver, we had me playing Mono Red Heroic, we had Mono Black, we had that kid who always shows up with Grixis Infect, we had Delver Fiend, Jake showed up with Mono White Soldiers.
Oh, yes.
Featuring Elite Vanguard, which is blisteringly fast.
Yep, I played against that deck on Moto, and I lost. And I was a little shocked. I was like, how am I losing to 2-1s? I have, Trickery in my deck.
Well, that's the thing. He's running a build with Ballyrush Banneret.
Is that the one where the soldiers cost 1 less?
Yes. And one time I was playing a casual game with him, and he did just go turn 2 Ballyrush Banneret, turn 3 Ballyrush Banneret for 1 white, and then Phyrexian mana'd in 3 Porcelain Legionnaires, at which point the game is pretty much over.
Brutal.
Yeah, turn 3 dropping 9 power first strike onto the board for free, basically, is not easy to deal with.
Yeah, so obviously this deck has some weaknesses. We discussed Trickery. There's also Shrivel.
Even Car's Justice.
And Even Car's Justice. So there are ways to interact with that. Even Cars might be too slow. The game's probably over already if he's doing that on turn 3.
But it seems like a sweet deck.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not a sweet deck. Yeah, it seems good.
I definitely think that White Weenie Soldiers might be a thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, Thraben Inspector enables that deck a lot. Thraben Inspector is a great card. It has a suite of 2-power flyers that it can play. So it's not. Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
All right, so that covers F&M pretty much. And we've got a deck tech that got sent in by David Kane.
David Kane, #1 fan.
On I believe this was through our website. And it's Black Red Koldatha, which is interesting. It's interesting little bit of spice.
And, it's... David, you say this is a Kuldotha deck, and it's true that you are playing Kuldotha Rebirth, but this is not really a kitty deck, right?
Well, it's not a kitty deck, but I think it does some things in common. It very much looks kind of like a mid-range deck. But let's get into the actual list.
Yeah.
So, 12 creatures. He's got 1 Bushwhacker, 1 Goblin Sledder, 1 Krark Clan Shaman, 1 Mog Raider, 1 Mog War Marshal, 1 Sparksmith, 2 Goblin Matrons, and 4 Gurmag Anglers.
Alright, so one of those cards clearly stands out.
Yes, it's the Gurmag. Like, I think that's, going to be the finisher in this deck. I like the fact that it's got 2 Matrons and kind of this this tutor package.
Yeah.
Because you've got, like, Krark Clan Shaman against, like, White Weenie, for example. Or even, I guess Krark Clan doesn't hit flyers, so you wouldn't...
Correct.
It wouldn't be good against Delver.
You could play it against Stompy, though, or the Soldier deck.
Yeah, there's definitely decks where that seems pretty good against. You got the Raider and the Sledder for your Goblin shenanigans with blocking and invalidating removal with other stuff tacked on it. And then you just got Angler to close out games. That seems super fine to me. Like, also you got Sparksmith as a one-of, which is real spicy.
Yeah, you're just not running a critical mass of goblins, so I could see that maybe being a little questionable. But honestly, I think this creature package already, this is what caught our eyes, right? It's like, oh, goblin, Gurmag Angler, interesting.
Yeah, and then we get into, like, the other spells. 4 Chromatic Star, 4 Crack the Earth. Crack the Earth is an interesting little one from Kamigawa block.
It's red, each player sacrifices a permanent.
Yep.
Now, but see, your permanents are Ichor Wellspring and Chromatic Star.
Yeah, and Terrarian even.
Yeah.
So you're getting... You're probably getting a card out of this if it's not a turn 1, or it can just be, if you have a land-heavy hand with a Crack the Earth,
just raise
mountain,
them.
Raise, see if they've got the second land. Or see if they kept a hand that was, like, somewhat suspect.
So already we're seeing that this deck attacks your opponent on 2 axes. We have this extremely, limited Goblin package where you can beat down. We have the Gurmag Anglers and the Crack the Earth plus the Stars to attack your opponent's land base while maintaining your own card value, and at the same time you're fueling your graveyard for Gurmag Angler. So you have like three different axes you're sort of attacking your opponent on here, and that's really interesting.
And also they've got 4 Molten Rain main deck, again, to sort of contribute to the land destruction plan. I think the one super interesting inclusion in the main deck that I think is super spicy here is Warren Weirding.
And that's target players sacks a creature. If it was a goblin, they get 2 1/1 goblin tokens.
Yep. So it can either be used to edict your opponent if they've got 1 threat you just need to deal with, or it can be used. I think the sweet spot is Mog War Marshal. Popping a Mog War Marshal,
getting 3 tokens,
getting 3 more tokens. I think that's super sweet.
And we also have a small removal suite here in Flame Slash and Lightning Bolt, as well as 4 Kuldotha Rebirth. I think I already touched on that one. So you have a lot of ways to cycle these Ichor Wellsprings, Terrarians, and Chromatic Stars that aren't necessarily cracking them for mana.
Yeah, so this is kind of like a weird hybrid between, like, it has some things that a kitty deck would have, but you've also got elements here of what I think of more as an affinity package. Like, Krark Clan Shaman sees play in affinity from time to time when it's necessary.
Yes.
You've got Crack the Earth seems super spicy in this just because it is a permanent. Like, I feel like your best play is when, you're against Jeskai Kitty and they have the super aggressive, like, Ancient Den into Glinthawk turn 1.
And you're like, Crack the Earth.
Crack the Earth. Just brutally 2-for-1 myself to get your best threat.
If you're on the play and you go turn 1 land Chromatic Star, you're not even behind, right? Because you're cracking the Earth, you're getting rid of their guy, and you're drawing a card. That's not shabby.
I mean, even against, like, Delver, if they don't counter it, like, just getting maybe a Delver or a land from them, that's the thing. Like, Crack the Earth seems like... This deck has all these things that make Crack the Earth asymmetrical in your favor.
Mm-hmm. And I like it a lot. I would consider this... Yeah, this is going to be a fun deck to do a little rebrew on, perhaps.
Yeah, and then the lands look pretty stock. The only thing I think in there that's interesting and out of the usual is I'm seeing a 1-of Crumbling Vestige.
Which in this deck is probably fine. I know that 5-color Boggles has been running Crumbling Vestige, and that we saw the deck maybe get locked out of some games, but you have so many colorless cards here in the list, it's probably not a big deal.
Yeah, and I mean, in worst case scenario, like if there's nothing else to do with it, it gets sacked to Crack the Earth, and I think that's fine.
Interesting note, though, there are no... there are 4 Great Furnaces, but no Vault of Whispers in this list, it looks like.
Yeah, I think that comes down to a color balance here. This deck is mainly red.
That's true. And
Great Furnace, like, a lot of people like to include a couple of the artifact lands unless they have, like, a lot of basic land tutoring, because Mono Black still does run Wrenchmind. And
yes.
It is a protection against Wrenchmind.
Yes.
So...
also, and I think this is a bad play, but I've seen people do it where you turn 1, rebirth your land.
Yeah.
I don't think that's normally a very good play, and I don't think I would keep a hand where that was my game plan unless I was really desperate for them for some reason. I don't like that play.
I'm thinking, you know, maybe that's the play against something incredibly dirtily that doesn't have good early answers. I'm thinking maybe Turbo Fog, even though it's an outsider deck. Like, Turbo Fog takes a while to get going, and they don't want to fog against 3 damage. But if you've got a land-heavy hand and a rebirth, maybe...
that makes more sense.
Yeah, or even, like, maybe Teachings if you feel like you can pull it off. If you've got... Okay, here, let's say you've got, like, a couple Crack the Earths, 3 land, and a rebirth, and something else. Like, maybe you just go hard into, like, trying to make sure they can't play.
Yeah, so you Crack the Earth turn 1. Oh, no, sorry. No, Crack the Earth turn 1.
You rebirth turn 1.
Turn 2, you Crack the Earth, sacking a token to make them sack their tap land or something.
Yeah. Like, I think that it's got a very interesting land destruction package, because Crack the Earth seems like...
But, you know, 4 Molten Rains, your matchup against Teaching is probably pretty good already, right?
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, that's somewhere where I could see that being the play. Yeah. But yeah, just the amount of, like, little value-y interactions here. I'm not 100% sure with Bushwhacker. I guess if you, like, hit a couple of rebirths in a row, Bushwhacker seems pretty good. But it looks more like this is a deck that's going to be wanting to go in on a big threat rather than diversifying. Still, this is super interesting. The sideboard's pretty much what I'd expect out of it, too. Like, 1 Elic Trickery, 2 Gorilla Shaman, 2 Krark Clan Shamans, 3 Pyroblasts, pair of Relic of Progenituses, Ancient Grudge, Diabolic Edict, Leave No Trace,
I
Terminate.
Actually, while we've been sitting here, I got out my phone, I actually had to look up Leave No Trace. It is a Ravnica common with Radiant. It's 2 white, it's a white and a 1 for an instant Radiance. Destroy target enchantment, and each other enchantment that shares a color with it. Is Radiance like the Boros mechanic from that set?
Yes, Radiance was the Boros mechanic. It's not a well-remembered one because it's not very good.
Well, this is good.
Yeah, it seems great. That's in there for the Boggles matchup.
Yeah,
and I think
that's
another...
Standard Bearer.
Yeah, Standard Bearer would work. I like the fact that this deck does kind of get a little bit of reach with its sideboard, because you've got, 4 Terrarians, 4 Chromatic Stars. You can kind of splash in those spicy
like
sideboard cards.
A 1-of white card.
Yeah.
You're probably going to be able to activate Ancient Grudge both times.
What else do we have in here? There's another Warren Weirding in the sideboard, and I'm guessing that's for the matchups where you really need that Edict effect.
Yeah. So more Edict effects is good. So between the main and the board, we have 3 Edict effects, it looks like. We have a D-Edict and then 2 Warren Weirdings.
Crack the Earth is also an Edict. Like, if your opponent's light on land, they're just going to go for a creature just so they can keep playing threats.
It's a permanent Edict. The deck looks sweet. Gorilla Shaman, cut that. That card's garbage. Kidding.
The salt is real. Relic of Progenitus is a little weird to me. And I'm just going to say this because the deck runs black, and maybe Nihil Spellbomb's better.
You're big on the Nihil Spellbomb, too. Especially for the black decks.
I
agree.
I am. Especially because there's a deck running 4 Gurmag Anglers.
Yeah.
Like, occasionally you're just going to set yourself back against a graveyard deck, and I feel like with this deck, Nihil Spellbomb only hits your opponent's graveyard. And yes, it does require black mana, but... I don't know. So you've got a decent amount of black sources.
Here's my argument to play devil's advocate for a second, because I know we've had this conversation before. Having played a graveyard deck in the Rebrew series, I would much rather my opponent Nihil Spellbomb me once than be able to continuously be able to activate a relic.
Yes.
Especially if they have 2 relics. That's basically unbeatable.
Yes. I do think that is the big perk of Relic, is just the fact that you're able to keep them off. Like, I've definitely played against graveyard decks where they've made, like, garbage plays because they wanted to get something else into the graveyard just so that way they could avoid exiling something they actually cared about.
Yeah, but I agree with you on the other side, too. Sometimes you just need to nuke it once instead of over the course of the game. And in those decks, yeah, probably the Nihil Spellbomb's better. If you're also trying to achieve a graveyard strategy. But, because sometimes it's just irrelevant that they're making you exile cards out of your graveyard with the relics. You know, it's like, whatever, I'll just take the worst card and move on.
Yeah, I definitely think, like, there's an argument to be made. Maybe it's meta-dependent on the Nihil Spellbomb versus Relic in this list.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the 4 Gurmag Anglers are a little tricky to support as is, and making that tougher doesn't seem great to me. So yeah, that's a really sweet deck list. We're going to try and get this together for Rebrew.
So, caveat, Mike's leaving to get married. We're currently marathoning these episodes.
Yeah,
when he gets back, we'll do the Rebrew.
I'm going to be out of town for 2 recording sessions, so we're sitting down and recording a whole bunch today. So full warning, you know.
Full disclosure.
if they get really garbage by, you know, the 3rd episode from now, that's why we're just kind of trying to jam these out.
However, you will still have to wait each week. Isn't that great of us? It's like we're not going to be gone at all.
Yeah, no, it keeps us on schedule, right? That's important.
Yeah.
But apart from that, we shouldn't have any interruption of service. You know, we'll keep bringing you content. Also, as fair warning, if anything I say in one of the next 2 episodes turns out to be, you know, completely invalidated in the next week, you know, I'm not responsible for that. We can't see the future. On the other hand, if I predict something and it comes right, I am now your new god, and you will worship me as such.
That's a great attitude.
Alright, so our next thing up is Reddit user eDaniels21 has asked a couple times about this because we've alluded to it. Adrian loves him some, you know, good old-fashioned affinity. Some robots. And we've alluded to the fact that your list is a little different than the standard list, and E. Daniels was wondering, you know, let's talk about this. Let's discuss what the differences are here. So this is mainly going to be Adrian's segment because obviously it's his list. He's going to discuss, you know, his choices and why he's made them. So how about you hit us up with that list of yours?
Gladly. So, as you all know, Affinity is the best deck in the format. The only things that remotely keep it in check are the numerous amounts of heinous artifact hate that should be #banned. But other than that, it's actually very flexible. So I like to define Affinity as an mid-rangey deck. I wouldn't really classify it as an aggro deck, but a mid-rangey deck that can sometimes combo out and has insane amounts of card draw. And because it has access to 5 colors, can also sport a very versatile sideboard. I think it has a core of creatures that I'm about to get into that you really can't tamper with, but some of them are very powerful. The first one on my list here is Carapace Forger, which is 9 times out of 10 a 4/4 for 2, which is just incredible. That's like Tarmogoyf value almost, a 4/4 for 2 in this format. Affinity can really get by on these, you know, sort of faster attack plans because it's playing creatures that are bigger than 99% of the creatures in the format. Really, the only creature that outclasses Affinity is Gurmag Angler.
Yep.
And, you know, so sure, yeah, you have that. 4 Frogmites, like to have some high affinity count. 4 Mirror Enforcers. 4 Atogs. Atog, best creature in the format. just is. Yeah, sure, I'll sack a Chromatic Star, draw a card, and kill your guy. That seems fine.
Or, you know, just close out the game early by blowing up your entire board.
Yeah, I've definitely won games where someone like doesn't block an Atog or can't block an Atog, sack 5 artifacts to it, then fling for the rest. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. And so Affinity does have some flex slots in its creatures. I have moved back to Somber Hoverguard, but as of this list, I was playing 3 Auriok Sunchasers. I like to play Affinity lists that are a little more threat heavy, as opposed to draw heavy, because I think there are 2 ways the deck really loses which are either I don't draw the colors I need, which is why I changed from the white creature to the blue one again, or I flood out. And so it's really weird. Like, if you draw too... Like, I've lost a game where I drew 4 Thought Casts and cycled 3 Chromatic Stars. And I just, like, never hit relevant threats. And it's like, you think drawing that much out of your deck and with, 20-odd creatures you'd be able to get there, but it must have been a weird game. My flex slots right now are actually... This list was running 2 Ornithopters. And my argument for Ornithopter over Flare Husk is that it's free, which can be a big deal. So I've had hands where I go land, drum, Thopter.
Tap Thopter, tap drum.
Yeah, tap Thopter, tap drum, Frogmite. Like a 2/2 on turn 1 is pretty good.
Well, 2 bodies as well. You've got one that's just a chump blocker mainly, but it blocks Delver.
Yeah, it blocks Delver, and it also blocks Spellstutter Sprite. So if you could I've played games where I've blocked a Sprite over a Delver, and then if they want to get their ninjutsu on, they got to bounce their flip to Delver. I'm like, that's just some sweet tempo in my favor.
Yeah, that is pretty sweet.
So I think Ornithopter is better in some cases than Flare Husk. The argument for Flare Husk is that it creates 2 permanents, which one of them you can sacrifice to Perilous Research, and the other is that it leaves behind an equipment that will buff your guys, which is actually very relevant.
Well, speaking of Perilous Research, let's get into your spell package.
Yeah.
So I'm seeing 4 Thoughtcast, 4 Galv Blast, and I think those are mandatory, right?
Yeah, those are great spells. Those are big reasons to play the deck.
Then 4 Springleaf Drum helps enable the fast mana even better. 4 Chromatic Stars, again, helps enable the mana. Can be popped by ATOG for a card and +2/+2. You got 4 Prophetic Prisms in here.
Yeah.
This is a little bit of a deviation because sometimes they run the Ichor Wellspring, right?
Yeah, and so the reason I started running 4 Prophetic Prisms is I was so tired of losing to my own mana base. I was like, the good thing about Ichor Wellspring is it draws you 2 cards. The bad thing about Ichor Wellspring is you have to sacrifice it. So since I wasn't playing Perilous Research and my only sack outlet currently was ATOG, because I don't run Karkland, I wasn't running Karkland Shaman in the board. I still don't think I am. I didn't want to do nothing that only drew me a card. I wanted to also be able to filter my mana.
Well, yeah. Also, since you only have ATOG as a sack outlet, that Ichor Wellspring is just going to sit there unless you draw a red mana source, whereas the Prophetic Prism will actually let you get that ATOG online.
Exactly. So I figured the Prophetic Prism was a little better.
And then you're rounding it off with 2 Flings, obviously, for the ATOG Fling combo.
Yes. And I'm not running Teamer Battle Rage. I know some of the affinity lists do run that. I would prefer to just Fling an ATOG and get it over with. So if you have Fling, you can basically combo kill your opponent whenever they tap out. Teamer Battle Rage, you have to do it in combat, and it relies on combat damage. So against Turbo Fog especially, it doesn't work.
Or Circle of Protection Red.
Yeah.
They do have to pay twice, but they still stop it.
Yeah, well, Fling stopped by Cop Red, too.
That's true. That's true.
So yeah, for that, they have to pay twice, but I'm just not really a big fan of Teamer Battle Rage. I've tried it out, and almost every time I had Battle Rage, I would have rather had Fling.
And then your land-based 3 Ancient Den, 4 Great Furnace, 4 Seat of the Synod, 3 Tree of Tales, and 3 Darksteel Citadels. Darksteel Citadel used to not show up as much. It's showing up more now, I think, just because people really hate that Gorilla Shaman.
Well, it sucks when you lose a game as Affinity because you can only play 4 of each of the colored lands, right? So it's not like I can magically fix my deck and make it better by playing more of these lands. So there are some flex slots. I don't really need that many Ancient Dens, right? Because I'm only playing 3 white cards in the main. But Darksteel Citadel, sometimes if you pop that down and they play Gorilla Shaman, you're like, okay, I can survive.
You can still play a game. You can still actually have a game of Magic occur instead of just getting Stone Rained every single turn.
Yeah, Gorilla Shaman is super unfun for me to play against, but I do have to respect the fact that it's one of the only cards. I think Affinity is an amazing deck, and I think if there wasn't cards like Gorilla Shaman, it would be a lot more heavily played. I mean, still is. I still think of it as a tier 1 deck in the format, but it's just like it's just like in Modern, right? The only reason Affinity doesn't run hog wild all over the format is because of Stony Silence.
Yeah, I think that's always Affinity's thing. Is it's a powerful deck, but it has incredibly powerful hate cards for it.
Yeah, and I've been playing it a long time, a few years now, and you eventually have to start. I live by the cranial, die to the board.
Yeah.
Is the phrase I came up with. It's really nerdy.
So I looked on MTG Goldfish. I found a 5.0 list for Affinity, and I took down some notes about what they run instead of you. So they do not run the 3 Aureox Sunchasers. They do not run the 2 Ornithopters. They do not run 3 out of your 4 Springleaf drums.
I disclaimer, I did tell him, like, I think that's really unusual. I know this list is 5-0ing, but taking on drums might not be bad because it sucks to draw drums in the late game.
I could see cutting it down to 2, but going down to 1 seems... I agree, it's a little bit suspect.
This list has replaced the 3 drums with 3 Terrarians. So, and I think I've had this discussion with you before, what's key is not so much the drum, it's that you're being able to play 1-drop artifact to enable your later Frogmites.
Yeah. They also cut 2 Ancient Dens just on account of they don't run any white cards besides stuff out of the sideboard.
Yeah, that's totally correct. Cutting Ancient Dens to go up on your Darksteel Citadel count as A-OK.
Yeah, so they're replacing those 2 Ancient Dens with 1 more Tree of Tales, 1 more Darksteel Citadel, which seems fine. Mm-hmm. They're running 3 Terrarians, they're running 3 Perilous Research, which lets them get a little bit of extra mileage out of those Terrarians and the Chromatic Stars. They're running the 2 Flare Husks, and you have been very vocal about not being a huge fan of Flare Husk and preferring Ornithopter.
I'm playing them again now, though, and they're actually kind of sweet, so...
So maybe you were wrong.
So maybe I was wrong. So the Terrarian Perilous Research interaction that you mentioned is very interesting, because I also have played an all-in combo version of this deck that played all the mana draw artifacts, a full playset of Perilous Researches, and Disciple of the Vault, and just held back, cycled all these artifacts until I could draw the Fling and combo kill my opponent. And with Disciple of the Vault, it's essentially like each activation of ATOG is 3 damage.
Yeah.
And so I've killed players, well-known players, solely off of the Disciple activations.
Yeah, so I think with Flare Husk, the big argument that I can find in favor of it is it does let you trade for those Gurmag Anglers, and I hate to return to this all the time.
Well, it's a format warping creature, and by that I mean you have to be prepared to deal with it.
Yeah, like it does let you trade. So best case scenario, a Mirror Enforcer, you suit it up with Flare Husk, and you trade something that hopefully you paid close to 0 mana for, in exchange for a Gurmag Angler, which they had to do some work to set it up.
You can also sacrifice the Germ token to the Perilous Research and not be down any actual permanents, which is also a big deal.
And Flare Husk still gets eaten by ATOG, so it's got that going for it.
I would postulate that it doesn't really these tweaks are very minor. This deck may run a little bit more smoothly than mine, but you're playing the ATOGs, Carapace Fortress, Mirror Enforcers, and Frogmites. Like, it's still an Affinity deck, and it's still going to be good. You may want to nuts and bolts it a little for your own meta, but like the deck, no matter what form yours ends up taking, is going to be powerful and is going to do powerful things.
Yeah, because that's the thing. There's a total of 10 cards difference between these 2 lists. That's pretty negligible, and your deck plays very differently than how this would, just in terms of, like, you do have more explosive starts than this, but you got a little less card draw.
But I wouldn't, like, if someone handed me this other list and was like, play this version, I wouldn't be like, I would play it, and I would probably still do pretty well with it.
Yeah, I definitely think that most decks have a couple of flex slots where, you can get a little creative, you can put your own spin on things. Some lists are a little bit more solid than others, and you definitely kind of have to play this version of it because it is just the best.
Now let's talk about this sideboard, though I totally disagree with. But
all right. So let's go through your sideboard first. We've got 2 Ancient Grudge, an Elect Trickery, a Diabolic Edict, a Standard Bearer, a Cop Red, a Relic of Progenitus, 2 Pyroblasts, 2 Hydroblasts, 2 Journey to Nowheres, a Ray of Revelation, and Armadillo Cloak. So you've got a very, very broad sideboard.
And that's one of the luxuries Affinity has in this format, and it's true in Modern as well. You are playing a colorless 5-color deck, and as such, you're allowed to play kind of whatever you want in the sideboard. And so I would like my sideboarding strategy is to pick a lot of silver bullets that I can, hopefully draw in the matchup.
Yeah, definitely. And theirs is much more 3 to 4 ofs. They have 3 Dispels, 3 Electrickeries, 2 Relics, 4 Ancient Grudges, 1 Negate, and 2 Ray of Revelations.
So the Dispels are the 3 Dispels. I used to play 2 Dispels in my sideboard, and like that's interesting. But the only time I ever really was using them was when I was trying to protect my combo. Because if my opponent wants to, I've had opponents counterspell my Frogmites. I don't care about that. They can counterspell my Frogmite all day. 3 Electrickery seems good if you're it's very meta dependent. If this guy, Stompy's very popular on Moto right now, so Dispel and Electrickery actually seem pretty good. 4 Ancient Grudge seems kind of weird. Affinity's not super popular, and I think Ancient Grudge is the most.
I think Affinity's sitting at number 4 in the overall standings for 5-0s, so it's not unpopular. Like I definitely can see maybe not 4,
I wouldn't
but
play 4. Well, because I think that sometimes Ancient Grudge is kind of a trap. Like I'll bring it in against Tron and Kitty, and sometimes it's just totally dead.
Ooh, I don't think you want to bring it in against Kitty.
Well, sometimes you can do what they want to do to you, just blow up their first couple lands. And I also had a game where the guy had out 2 non-artifact. He had 2 lands and a. It doesn't matter what kind of lands were. He had out 2 lands and an Ichor Wellspring, and he played the 2/3, the Core Skyfisher, and in response to the Skyfisher trigger, I blew up the Ichor Wellspring, and I forced him to bounce a land. And like that's a very catty corner case, but it was still kind of sweet.
Yeah, no, that definitely seems like it, and that does also make a case for that over Gorilla Shaman, just because Gorilla Shaman is very much a silver bullet for Affinity.
Yeah, I used to play a 1 of Gorilla Shaman in my sideboard, and unless you're one of like 4 Affinity decks at your local meta, I wouldn't bother.
Yeah, I think that, Affinity would rather have the broader answer, just to answer any sort of artifacts. But, again, like, these lists are very close. The sideboards are very different. Yours actually seems like it's very broad in terms of your answers, because you've got Ancient Grudge handles anyone who's playing artifacts that are important to them. Electrickery handles any of the swarm strategies, or can even come in against Boggles if you kind of want to nuke an early board. Diabolic Edict is good against any of the decks that are trying to get one big threat online.
And
Tron, maybe?
Yeah, I had one Tron player. He played he tapped out, played Finger Marauder, ended his turn. I Diabolic Edicted, and he said in the chat, did not see that coming.
Well, yeah, because you don't have any Vaults of Whispers. Like, you're just getting there off of the back of
it was a drum, yeah,
Drum and Chromatic Star. You've got Standard Bearer in there, again, for Boggles. It also hits, like, Delver Fiend and Mono Red Heroic.
And Infect, perhaps.
Infect as well, yeah.
A local meta menace.
1 Circle of Protection Red, so, you can... That's mainly for burn. It's mostly burn, and then, like, Goblins as well.
Yeah. I brought it in against you.
Yeah. You have a couple times just hard locked me with that. It's very difficult for red decks to do.
That's how we met, actually.
Yep.
I met him when I was hard locking him with Hot Red.
Relic of Progenitus is just for any of the graveyard decks. You don't care about your graveyard. Relic is fine.
Yeah.
Pyro and Hydroblast, just because those are great counter spells in the matchups.
I think I can play them. I'm going to play 2 of each.
The 2 Journey to Nowhere is interesting. That's another concession for Tron, isn't it?
That is a Tron concession, absolutely. I am so tired of losing to Fangren Marauder. Originally, and still in my paper list, that is actually 2 Bolts. Because I like Bolt a lot more than the Journeys, because it answers so many creatures in the format. It's basically like Galvanic Blast 5 and 6 a lot of times. Yep. And there have been games where I've been like Bolt, Fling, and I win the game. So
they do give you a bit more reach rather than just straight removal. Ray of Revelation is the one that nukes enchantments, correct?
Yes, it's Ancient Grudge for enchantments. It's there for Boggles. It's also there for like Kitty and Mono Black. Because there are games where if they'll attack and you blow up the enchantment and get your guy back. And so that's one of the things I like about having a broad sideboard. It gives me a lot of answers and it makes for some really interesting plays.
Oh, and you've also got the one of Armadillo Cloak I'm seeing in here.
You know what? The more I play with it, the less of a fan of it I am, actually.
Oh, really? Because that seems like a really great way against the super aggressive decks to kind of get back in the game.
So, yes, and when it works, it works. Don't laugh, it works. But it costs white-green.
Yeah.
And, like, that's kind of it costs 2 different colors of mana, and that can be a hard sell sometimes.
So what do you think you'd replace that Armadillo Cloak with if you cut it from your board? Are you thinking about doubling up on one of these, or Because I could see you... Because Armadillo Cloak, what do you bring that in for?
Burn.
Burn? Maybe Boggles, just erase them?
Yeah, I could bring it against Boggles. It's such a hard question, really, to answer, because what would I switch? Maybe a Dispel? Maybe not Reaping the Graves, but the other one, the one time, Death Denied. I used to run Death Denied on my board.
Ooh, double black would be real hard to hit.
It's like the same problem, yeah.
Yeah, you really kind of want to be hitting the one colored mana level.
Well, a lot of these cards have been in my sideboard almost since I started playing the deck.
But I mean, it's a very diverse sideboard, which indicates that you've put in time with this deck, because, kind of starting sideboards when you first build a deck are kind of like 4, 4, 4, and 3.
Yeah.
Like 4 cards, just broad answers. And then as you go, you definitely narrow down in on like, all right, I'm going to have... Like, I've seen people who have boards that are just 15 singleton copies of cards, each one a silver bullet for a matchup. And
I like that a lot.
I think especially with Affinity, just because your mana base is in some ways flexible. Like, hitting one color of mana seems to be pretty doable.
Yes, and the deck also has a lot of card draw, Forethought Cast, and even that's just on the surface, right? I also have the stars and the prisms.
Yeah,
excellent. I normally end games with maybe 36 cards left in the deck. If it went kind of long, so
you do have a bit more reach in terms of like how many of these singleton silver bullets you can have, just because you are going to draw like half your deck over the course of the game. So the odds of them showing up are non-insignificant.
Yeah, and actually, my earlier example of like drawing too many cards and not having enough threats is a reason I think I prefer running the extra creatures over maybe the Terrariums, or more card draw spells. It's much better against mono black. It's much better against control decks, and I've now won a few games off the backs of 2 Somber Hoverguards, or even 1 Somber Hoverguard with a Flare Husk equipped to it.
Yeah.
So I think the extra creatures are the way to go. That's just what I personally like, especially since the only thing that stinks about Somber Hoverguard is that it's a 2 toughness creature.
Yeah.
So it dies like basically everything.
It does trade with Delvers, non-insignificant factor in the analysis of any card with flying, really. Mm-hmm. All right, so that pretty much wraps it up. Thanks, eDaniels21, for sending in this question. We're sorry it took a while to get to it.
Yeah, but thank you for letting me get on my little soapbox here. I will talk about Affinity any day of the week, and if eDaniels is the kind of guy I think he is, I think he's going to want to hear a little bit more about the ATOP combo deck in the future. So we will get into that, I promise you.
All right, so for our final topic of the day, we're going to talk a little bit kind of on the same theme. Some spicy inclusions for the more common standard lists that show up in Pauper. And I wrote a couple down, just so we have a jumping off point. So almost every deck has at least a couple slots that aren't super nailed down, and you can kind of pull in, the little bit of extra spice, a little paprika into that meal. Mm-hmm. So the first one I listed down here is just Rusted Relic and Rugtron. And I've seen this locally. Rugtron is already running, a pretty full suite of different mana-fixing artifacts.
Prof Prism, the map.
The map. I've even seen ones that run Prismatic Lens as more mana ramp. So, Rusted Relic, 4 mana, Metalcraft, it becomes a 5/5 golem. It's a big body, it's hard to answer, and it's just one more thing that, is going to gain you life off the Fangren Marauder.
Yeah, if it dies, it gains you 5 life, so...
Yeah, and that's sort of an interesting call. I don't think you want to run the full 4.
No, maybe like 2.
Yeah, I think you throw in 2 just as an additional threat, and,
And then what do we think of Maul Splicer?
I really like Maul Splicer in that deck.
Because Maul Splicer makes you 2 golems.
It makes you 2 golems. So actually maybe Rusted Relic in a Maul Splicer inclusive list. Because it gives them trample.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. That's spicy, yeah.
Yeah, no. Then you might be able to justify, like, if you're just ramping into, like
in a mono green Tron deck.
Yeah.
Because that's what plays Maul Splicer mostly, right?
Yeah, you occasionally see it in the Rugtron lists as well.
Why is Green Tron not more popular? Just while we're on the subject.
I don't know, really. I think part of the fact is you don't get to run the chromatic stars for fixing. Just because you're already running a bunch of forests, and most of your stuff only has 1 green in the mana cost, so I think the deck runs Prophetic Prism. I haven't seen a list in so long that I have no idea what it looks like.
But, we're talking Finger Marauder, we're talking Aurochs, perhaps.
Aurochs Herd.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Rusted Relic is a great example of, like, a kind of spicy inclusion that is a little hard to deal with. A 5/5 is nothing to sneeze at, and in Tron, you can hit 4 mana super easily.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you got Tron online, that's only 2 lands to get a 5/5. I'm pretty cool with it, and if you get multiples in play, they each help each other with Metalcraft. So I definitely think Rusted Relic is a consideration for Rug Tron. Next on our list, I put down Unmake in mono black and mono white. So Unmake is 3 hybrid black-white.
Mm-hmm. Exile target creature at instant speed. What are your thoughts on this? I think the reason it doesn't see more play is that 3 is kind of a tall order. But, I don't know. It's a very powerful effect.
I think certainly if you've got like a lot of...
It might be a little better in the board.
Yeah, I can definitely see it as more of a board card. It does just answer a threat. It's very pricey, but as long as that thing doesn't have Hexproof or Shroud, it's just getting rid of the thing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not thrilling versus like a Delver, but against like Gurmag Angler, sure.
Gurmag Angler, Ulamog's Crusher, any of the big must-answer threats, I can definitely see you bringing it in against them. And white always kind of has the issue of its removal is temporary if they have answers to enchantments.
Yeah, like Journey.
Yeah, your Journeys and your Oblivion Rings. Although, I guess Unmake might be a little out of favor now, what with Angelic Purge being in the format.
Yeah.
Angelic Purge does hit multiple different types
This is a
of
permanent,
permanents.
right? Yeah.
I believe it's creature, artifact, or enchantment.
Oh,
It won't
okay.
hit lands.
Gotcha. Yeah.
It's also 3 mana. It does require you to sacrifice a permanent, but there's plenty of decks that don't really care about that. So, Unmake, a little spicy, but maybe outclassed by, Angelic Purge, just on the basis of it's splashable. Like, kitty decks are running it, and those are 3 colors at times. Next up is a new feature, a new EMA inclusion.
Yeah, because this wasn't a common before, right?
It was a common in paper. It was not online. This is its first online printing, so we'll really see how the meta shapes around it. We're talking about Wake Dancer. Wake Dancer is 2 and a black for a 2/2. If Morbid is active, so if a creature's died this turn, you get a 2/2 when it comes in. I'm thinking, mono black control and aristocrats like this, right?
Yeah, because you can sack a creature to an Nantuko Husk. You can then play this card and get 2 more bodies for the Nantuko Husk.
Yeah, or in mono black, you're running so many edicts, and an edict always hits something. Even if they sack in response to it to get value off a creature with a sacrifice effect, something still dies.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't maintain that you had to actually kill it. It just cares that something went into the graveyard from play.
And 2 creatures for 3 is a pretty good rate in mono black, where all the creatures are actually kind of terrible. Because the other 2 are 3 drops are Phyrexian Rager, draws you a card.
Yep.
Pretty good. Still a 2/2 for 3, still a Grey Ogre after it's on the battlefield. And then we also have Chittering Rats, which puts your opponent's card back on top.
So what do you think of this as a board option for mono black as kind of a mirror breaker? Because the mono black mirror, stuff is dying. There's no questions about that.
I like it. I think it'd be decent. At the very worst, you could force your opponent to... You don't really 2-for-1 your opponent unless they trade, but if the zombie ends up eating one of their 2/2s, I would call that good.
Yeah, I think it has a place in mono black, maybe as a sideboard card to help out against matchups where you just need more bodies on the ground.
Yeah, or against an aggro deck, maybe it's you attack. Yeah,
you get 2 blockers out of it.
She can also be unearthed.
Yes.
She's a 3-drop or less creature.
So if she actually dies and you have Unearth and the mana for it, you can bring her back, and she is her own Morbid trigger. That actually seems kind of sweet.
Yeah, that is fun.
You cast her with Morbid, you get the zombie, and then something kills her.
Think about this. Also, Chittering Rats clear the board.
Crypt Rats.
Crypt Rats, clear the board, maybe with your Wake Dancer, unearth your Wake Dancer. Get 4 power and play to your opponent's nothing.
Yeah, no, I think Wake Dancer's definitely going to find a home.
It's some interesting tech, that's for sure.
It doesn't blow me away, but the thing about Mono Black for a long time has been, barring Grey Merchant, a lot of the creatures it runs are kind of iffy quality.
And even Grey Merchant, I mean, it's a 2/4, but other than that, if Grey Merchant is the only pips on the table when it enters, you drain 2 and you have a 2/4, which is not awesome for 5 mana.
No, yeah. I definitely think that Wake Dancer could find a home in Mono Black. I think it's definitely going to show up in that Black-Green Aristocrats deck that's been showing up.
Yeah, that one, I believe we discussed, won that Open in Argentina, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's a...
It also won the Magic Gathering Strap Pauper Gauntlet.
So, why have we not been seeing this deck more on Moto?
I think just because it doesn't have the best of matchups. It does a lot of sweet value-y things, but at the end of the day, it's mostly running 2/2s. Like, occasionally it winds up with, the carrion feeder that's an 8/8 and just keeps bashing in until they're dead.
Well, like, Brindleshote is awesome. There's a reason Brindleshote went from 30 cents to $5 or whatever it is now.
Well, I mean, that's mostly speculators specking on Pauper, but...
Please don't spec on Pauper. Speculators, don't ruin our format.
At least not in paper, It's harder to force a spike on Mitko.
Because it was only printed in plain chase in paper. Yep. Moto was printed in Vintage Masters at a common, which is why it's in the format. It was an uncommon in plain chase. But now they're re-releasing plain chase, so maybe it'll go down.
Oh, that's true. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, so
I forgot about the plain chase anthology entirely.
Well, it's also like Brindleshote is just kind of,
it's a sweet little value creature.
He's a side... in that deck he's not, but like the only other place I've seen him is a sideboard card in Stompy. And like he is a sweet... It is a sweet card.
Because he eats an edict and then he comes back bigger.
Yeah,
it's Young Wolf plus some.
But even even better than that now, if you're using him in this Aristocrats deck, it's like sack my dude, go 3/3.
Oh, 100%. Especially if it's going into, making that towering behemoth carrion feeder.
So there are 8 Aristocrats then in that deck, because I'm thinking 4 Nantuko Husk and 4 carrion feeders.
It also runs like Keljoran Dead, which is 1 black for a 3/1 that regenerates when it enters the battlefield. You got to sack a creature.
Okay, I know that card. We have actually talked about that card, how I thought it was a pretty decent card, but there was not really a spot for it. So,
and I think that spot is Aristocrats. Yeah. Next on our list, and this one is one that we actually... I showed this one to you, and you were like, why isn't that a thing? Ninja of the Deep Hours in Acid Trip. So, Acid Trip, if you're not familiar, it uses Reality Acid and the Skyfisher effects to
Skyfisher
vindicate.
And Dreamstalker.
Yeah. So Ninja gives them a little bit more in terms of the Skyfisher effects, because you can Ninja back a Skyfisher. So, and it also generates value, because if they don't block it and you ninjutsu it in, you're getting a card. So I kind of like that. The deck doesn't run the package with Ichor Wellspring and a way to sack it. So maybe this works.
Maybe it's just better than what's the Momentary Blink? Like, does that deck really need Momentary Blink? Or no, because Momentary Blink you can do twice is the only thing.
Yeah.
But Ninja seems good. What are we replacing here?
Well,
maybe Auramancer? I don't really need it.
I haven't seen Auramancer run in Acid Trip yet.
Okay.
That also seems a little interesting. The big spicy inclusion for a while in that deck was, the one of...
Sorry, not Auramancer. Helios Pilgrim. Not Auramancer, my bad.
Well, you could run Auramancer in that, because that deck sometimes does run into the issue of someone figures out how to juke out of the way of all the reality acids. And
Affinity, you can sack your lands in response.
Feels bad, but it stops them from getting a bunch more.
Yeah, they were doing that anyway, so...
Yeah, I think Ninja might be an inclusion, or at least a consideration, for Acid Trip. The next one I want to talk about is actually Pulse of Marasa, which I have raved about, and is just the most solidly average card I have ever seen.
But it's so good.
Like, that's the thing. It's good without trying. Like, Delver Secrets, for example, is an obviously good card. It's a 3/2 for 1 blue. Almost all the time. And Pulse is one of those things where it's like, the two halves of it don't look good. It's a raised dead that can get back a land, worth taking into consideration, and 6 life. Like,
which are both like terrible effects. Yeah.
Yeah, and
but
somehow stapled together,
they're better than it's better than this stuff. Because okay, so what deck are we playing this in? We're playing this as a sideboard deck, and any deck that can play green. Basically, maybe not Stompy. Stompy, I don't think is in the market for this.
Yeah, Stompy has its life gain covered already.
Tron or even Affinity.
Tron is main decking this now.
Yeah, well, like think about this. What if they counterspell your Ulamog's Crusher? You're playing against Delver. How are you going to get it back? You know, you could do Haunted Fingraph, or you could just pull some Marasa that sucker on back and buy yourself 2 extra Delver hits.
So I have seen Rugtron lists that run 4 Haunted Fingraphs and 2 of Pulse of Marasa.
They are
that is amazing.
That's one of the big strengths of that deck. You know, is being able to like regrow their creatures.
Like how like you have a fairly bad matchup with Affinity and Tron. Like, how bad is that feeling after,
it's backbreaking where they're like, oh, I'm going to recur my Finger Marauder and gain 6 life, and I'm like, okay, but this Magic is a fun game as I curl up in my fetal position.
Yeah, and I've also seen it in, like, very grindy green lists where you just want to be able to play the long game really well, and I definitely think it has a place there. Yeah, it's definitely kind of the sleeper hit because it's never going to be the star of your deck.
It's just such good utility on both halves.
Exactly.
And I think that's the reason that individually those cards are bad, because you don't want to spend a card gaining 6 life or spend a card recurring your creature. But if you could do them both at the same time in a relevant color for these decks, then it's not so bad.
I think part of the fact is that it's not just a raised dead. It does get back a land, which Tron really likes.
Yeah, so you can get back your Tron land if it gets killed.
Yes, you can get back the Tron lands after they, have their sweet sideboard tech. Like, this, when your opponent brings in Choking Sands, seems fine. Like, you pay 3 mana, blow up my land, I lose 2. I pay 3 mana, I get that land back, I gain 6. So I'm up 6, I'm up 4 life, I'm down tempo, but Tron is a late game deck, so it doesn't really care that much about it. Another one I had here is a paper special. Unstable Mutation. Never seen common printing online. Unstable Mutation, 1 blue, it's an enchantment aura, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +3/+3. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a -1/-1 counter on enchanted creature. So we've seen this locally, haven't we?
Yeah, and that terrible Grixis. And how did that deck do on Friday? Be honest with me.
I don't know, actually. I was pretty focused, but
then it probably didn't do very well. I think this card is garbage.
I think it's garbage outside of a really fast aggro deck, Well,
because it's like this, right? It's like you're going to give your creature +3/+3, and then it's going to die.
Well, so I think that's the thing. It goes into a deck that doesn't care about 3 turns away, or 4 actually, because.
But like it could only be some sort of strange infect deck that for some reason was playing blue. Like it does. What is that? So what else could it? I mean, it's playing blue because you can play it in blue because the unblockable guy is blue and he's a common, so that's fine.
I think it's just an interesting inclusion. I think for a deck that really just wants that power at all costs.
You know what? That dude is not running Apostle's Blessing. Why would you run this over Apostle's Blessing?
I guess. And so Unstable Mutation maybe has a home. It's only paper. It's, definitely something that I think in a fast deck you can live with it. Like, okay,
it's not going in mono blue Delver.
Wait, I was actually going to present a counter argument.
Okay, go ahead.
Pop that on a Spire Golem. Late game.
All right.
5/7 in the air.
All right. But I would. It just. Okay, I'll bite. Best case scenario, you have a 5/7 that shrinks 1 every turn.
Yep.
Worst case, someone kills the golem in response,
and you get 2 for 1 on a 1-mana enchantment at the point where
but it's a card in your deck. I don't know.
I guess. I just think it's an interesting card that probably could find a home.
It's a spell that is not a blue. It's a blue spell that's not a blue spell. right?
Yes.
It's a pop spell in blue.
This is a huge color pie break.
Yeah. So in that aspect, this card is interesting. This card is an alpha card originally. I want to say too. So it's old and it's weird and it does something good and then it does something bad if it's around too long. So I don't know, Mike. I don't know. Maybe.
All right.
The sky is green and the plants are blue, I guess. But
okay, so let me hit you with this next little spicy ditty for Koldatha Jeskai.
Come on.
So you throw in Trinket Mage, you throw in Bone Splitter, you throw in a main deck Relic, you throw in
Sylvok Life Staff.
I don't think Sylvok, but maybe you throw in 2 Bone Splitters. All of a sudden, you have this tutorable package. That deck's already running artifact lands because it wants its Metalcraft count up. So you've got a 3-drop that either ramps you, grabs out a Bone Splitter to increase your clock, grabs out Relic just so you can combat a graveyard deck game 1. Because at worst, Relic cycles, right?
I know you have a love affair with Trinket Mage.
I fully admit, yes.
No, it's not a bad card. It's really not a bad card. I think it would be a better card if it was a 2-drop and a 1/1. What do you think?
I mean, a 2/2 body is nice because it doesn't die to Electrickery. It doesn't die to Shrivel.
And I think Trinket Mage is a fine card. I think the problem with Trinket Mage is the lack of quality targets. Bone Splitter is not bad, but it's not like...
Well, I mean, we've touched on it before. What's Jeskai Kitty's big, issue in some matchups? It's that it can't close out a game as well.
Yeah, you're right. So if you swing with a 4/3 flyer and then it's bolt, Gal Blaster, that sounds good. Yeah.
See, I think I've definitely seen it in 5/0 lists, and I like it as an inclusion. I don't think it's for every matchup.
Yeah, a very small package though, because you don't want to dilute your deck too much.
Well, the thing is, at worst in that deck, Trinket Mage is fetching lands and it's ramping you. It doesn't go into play; it goes into your hand. But sometimes hitting that 4th land drop is super important, and it definitely, I feel, has some sort of place occasionally. I don't think it's it's not an everyday inclusion for that deck. I definitely think it brings something new to the table that the deck doesn't have otherwise. So
yeah. Also, and then maybe I don't know. Then it's let's go a little deeper here. Before with the few minutes we have left, let's play Pyrite Spellbomb.
Okay. You play Pyrite Spellbomb
instead of the flashback spell, maybe.
Oh, instead of Firebolt.
Yeah.
Okay. Hear me out. Let's go on this magical journey together.
Okay.
Let's go real deep.
Let's play some spell bombs. Okay, now I'm into it. I like spell bombs.
Okay, you got the spell bombs. Let's say we toss in Leonin Squire. Gets back a 1-mana artifact from your bin.
Oh my god! Do we just build Pauper Bomberman?
So it kind of, but maybe there's a deck there. I think I've seen lists that run a Jeskai Trinket Mage list.
This sounds like a deck because you're playing Kitty, but you're playing a slightly different version where you're playing the Leonin Squire. You're playing Drafna's Restoration. Probably not in this deck.
Yeah, I mean, Drafna's Restoration is another paper special. It's one blue. Put any number of artifacts from your graveyard on top of your library.
We're probably not playing that, but we're playing some sort of small artifact recursion package. We're playing a tutor package. We're playing Pirate Spellbomb, which is my favorite spellbomb.
Yeah,
and then you can play So that's the great thing about Trinket Mage is you can play one of each spellbomb.
Yeah,
and then you
could.
You can sort of do whatever you want. I tried to brew a spellbomb ATOG list once, which saw a little success. Not really as much as I would have liked.
I'm gonna go on the most magical of journeys here.
Okay, go.
5-color spell bombs.
Oh my god, we're doing it.
No, we're not.
We're doing it, everyone. That's the list we'll have for you. Not next week, nor the week after, because we're doing all 3 episodes right now. But maybe the week after that.
All right. Well, that looks like all we've got for today. A reminder, we are pre-recording episodes, so you'll still get content. We're not going anywhere. But they will be, from the perspective of today's date, the 12th of June. remember, you can subscribe to us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook. We're on iTunes. If you subscribe to us there, we'd love to get a review. We got our first review.
Yeah, I was going to say we got our first review.
We got our first review that was like so glowing that I almost feel like it might be sarcastic.
The title of the review was groundbreaking, and you know what? I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Jellyfish.
We're also now on Google Play for those of you on Android devices. You can subscribe to us there.
Do you have all of our episodes up?
All of our episodes are up. It was actually way easier to set up than getting us on iTunes. So,
Awesome.
I just went ahead and did that. If you have any ideas for a discussion topic or a deck list you want us to discuss, you can either use the contact form on our website or email us directly at colorcommentary@gmail.com. I'm Michael Petchek.
And I'm Adrian Gonzalez.
Signing off for Color Commentary.